manufacturing, the key insights to consider, of course, the risks of non-compliance, probably mostly on the regulatory packaging and labeling perspective a little later on. Thanks once again, Live Pharma Coalition, for bringing all of us onto this common platform on a pleasant Sunday this morning. And when we talk about overview, we just now heard from Dr. Prashant Sharma ji also. India being the pharmacy of the world, we are in a very proud situation. Many people say, well, you belong to pharmaceutical industry. Okay. But let's not feel like that. Actually, you need to tell to the world the facts. Today, under the pandemic, you call it a post-pandemic, we're still in the pandemic situation. Imagine, despite all the flaws, despite all the deaths and casualties happened during the past couple of years, in the past and second wave mostly, but imagine, but for the presence of this great pharmaceutical industry, I think the effect and the damage would have been multifold, and no one can deny this. So this makes us very proud of our very own industry. So let's talk about the facts. Whenever people, the laymen, talk about us, all the pharmaceutical industry stakeholders like all of us. Well, the pharma safeguards the health. This is what I was talking about. But for the vaccines, the accelerated testings and accelerated permissions given for the vaccines, following all the safe protocols, I think the effects would have been daunting across the world. But India protects ourselves and protects a lot of countries. It's highly regulated. The industry is highly regulated, as I was telling you. It's not so easy, and it's not like making pure popcorn and selling into the open market and whatever it may be. But it follows the highly regulated situations. Need to really comply with the pharmacopoeial standards. And of course, comply with the audits. This is more important, my dear friends. And then overcome intellectual property barriers. You have, whenever you want to introduce a product, it comes with a very big tag of IPR rights and all. We need to really follow and respect those protocols as well. And GMP versus CGMP. This is something which I like. The pharmaceutical industry today must follow CGMP. But when you talk about GMP, as you all know, being the stakeholders of the industry, the GMP, the good manufacturing practices, always follow the 5 Ps. Dr. Barishkar can say more about it, with the people, premises, processes, products and procedures. But when you talk about the CGMP, it is a little much more critical, because it has to, the practices have to, the regulations undergo the regulations enforced by the FDA. Adherence to the CGMP regulations assures, of course, the identity, the strength and quality and the purity of the drug products which we all manufacture. And that requires your manufacturers of the medications adequately control manufacturing operations. So there is no compromise on it, the CGMP. And well, things to consider at manufacturing, as I was telling you, the very basics, what we talk about. The line clearance, many people take it very casually. Even in advanced countries, I have seen several countries, the manufacturing sites and all. Due regards to all their knowledge, due regards to all their commitment, it often goes unnoticed. So, the micro points, the intricacies of the line clearance. Whenever you change the batch, whenever you change strength or whatsoever, switching over to the other product line and to the line clearance, it has to be judiciously followed. There is no compromise, my dear friends. And not following an inch of it costs us very dearly. And I think all of us experienced into this. Operating instructions have to be so clear, so crystal clear. We all know, everyone know why to teach all of these things. Even many people, the floor supervisors and the floor managers, especially in the production operation area, they tend to neglect because with the urgency of the production, with the urgency of delivering goods by the day, even though they feel they know everything, of course they may be knowing everything, and there is always a danger that they do not follow the instructions properly. So one has to be very committal towards the operating instructions which are written down properly into the each processes. This is more important. Batch manufacturing process, we and continuous manufacturing process, we undergo be more of a different chemical industries follow continuous manufacturing. Within the pharmaceutical industry also, we have both batches manufacturing and continuous manufacturing. The very clear instructions are laid down, various procedures are laid down. You need to be following judiciously, as I was telling you, the processing instructions and strictly adhering to that and following this processes. Bill of materials is most critical. Never neglect everything. Everything before you start a process. You must have the preparations. The BOM is the most critical. You cannot neglect a small single thing. Sometimes a small tape or some small material which is auxiliary, which is not into the mainstream of the production, might really cost you a bomb, both in the productivity and also the quality. So you need to be very, very, very critical on adhering to the bill of materials before you start the process. Process control against and validation, of course, the documentation, the reporting documentation, scope, testing, and monitoring. When you talk about if you divide these into 2-3 stages, the stage one, as rightly said by Dr. Prashant Sharma ji, the process design, identification of process variables, this has to be kept judiciously into the mind before you start everything. You have to, it is more than like preparing for an exam, my dear friends. Normally, when you attend an exam, you prepare very well, we by heart some things and we remember some things, and then we deliver something and maybe we might pass out with a first class or distinction or a normal. But here, there is no question, there is no scope for complacency. You need to know everything right from the beginning. And then the stage two, the control strategy, the process qualifications, and finally your stage three, the process monitoring need for improvement. Whatever you've been doing, you have to go on the tender hooks for the continuous improvement. Defects display, it's more important. There are a lot of gadgets and machinery available, semi and fully automatic, integrated also. Very small things we neglect, but it's not only the export market, my dear friends, even the domestic markets. The recall is a word which scares me even in our dreams. I think all of you agree. Small things like dents on the capsule, the variation in the lengths, the joints or holes, sometimes double capping in the capsule, whatsoever. Very a few print defects and all. We think that okay, they go unnoticed and they can pass ho jayega. But I think let's not really take any complacency on that. Reporting issues, it's very critical also, right from the case planning, administration, and then investigating. Of course, issue intake and triage, investigations, remediation, resolution, reporting and analytics, and the matrix. This is a whole value process chain. And the testing is also more critical. It's a part of your manufacturing strategy. Of course, the incoming material has to be judiciously tested. You all have laid down procedures. Very often, we tend to neglect on this area, thinking that okay, everything is already pre-tested and all. You need to be very, very careful on allowing the material into the process before taking it to it. So right at the beginning itself, we need to test all judiciously. Process sampling is very, very critical, my dear friends. And tomorrow, if something happens, people are calling your batch process samples. Even if your process is very good and very right, if you make an error in sampling of the process, for example, there is an investigation post your production, maybe in a year later or something like that. If the sampling is not proper, definitely you will be called for an investigation and there will be suspicious thinking in the in the view of your investigators. So you have to keep that also in your mind. So before taking the process sampling, the finished goods, of course, you need to follow the testing procedures very judiciously. So both incoming and in process and the finished goods. Now the equipment calibration, it is also very, very critical. You will be questioned and you will be grilled if your process equipment is not calibrated properly time to time. Testing standards and procedures have to be judiciously followed. Documentation. This is the one which I always like. Many times we skip several columns saying that, oh chalega na, oh, theek hai. But that attitude will never be tolerated, especially in this life-saving industry. My dear friends, I'm reminding all of you, we are all stakeholders of the life-saving and life-sustaining industry. It's not a small industry. The pharmaceutical industry is something different from all other sectors. So documentation is very, very critical, my dear friends. Written down procedures, standard operating procedures, STPs and specifications, etc. have to be judiciously followed. There is no shortcuts, my dear friends. The job cards, batch records, many a times we fill up and we forget to sign also. Sometimes we have overwrite and all. Imagine, my dear friends, it's always like if you are not signing on the document, the concerned stakeholders, वो किसी बाप का किसी माँ का नहीं है, वो बच्चा पैदा हुआ, ऐसा होता है. Sorry for this comparison, but it is actually like this. I always keep telling my friends, if I find any document without a signature, I immediately throw it off on their face, saying that this is what. Tomorrow you will be grilled, my dear friends. You might be sincere in all recording your data and all, and then you simply forget to sign, or some reason you don't want to sign. I think that's not on. This is very important. And the change control and review procedures, I do not want to go in detail of that. Dr. Varishkar will be a legend in this situation. Definitely, he is going to elaborate on this. And this is being the important area in this. Of course, things of consideration to mitigate risk is personal training level also. Training is more important in today's circumstances. We keep getting executives at all levels, right from the basic supervisor level to a senior person. Definitely the induction program, like companies like Zydus, Pfizer and all, they have wonderful induction programs, because they do not want their newcomers in whatever stage they are inducted into and straight away onto the job. They wanted to teach the culture of the company. They wanted to teach the basics of the company, just like a student. So this is very important from all the organizations for their benefit. Today, we might be thinking we are losing few tens of hundreds of man hours by doing all these things. But this is going to help you all the organizations in the long run. Machine performance and validation, as we already talked, this has to be a frequent operation, periodical operation, time to time. And on-job training, as I was telling, is very, very critical. Skill development and enhancement. This is one area you have to be very, very cautious and careful about that. Safety first and training. Many times, even in the process, we often tend to have shortcuts in the system, in the urgency of the delivery of the goods, urgency of the productivity, improving the productivity, that kind of parameters. Never to take any shortcuts in the processes. That costs us very dearly. You need to know the first aid procedures and all on all your manufacturing operations. Everybody involved into that. Employee performance. This is also very important. Many times we often tend to assess the employee by their skills like productivity and saleability and how much they sold or how much they produced, etc. But at the same time, I strongly believe each and employee's performance has to be assessed based on their sincerity, dedication, and the commitment towards the company's vision and mission. And also, basically, the entire value chain, how he is treating, how he is involving himself, how employee is involving himself and delivering goods. It's not just by the results alone. This is my firm belief. Compliant handling has to be a really a proper format. Kappa. This is very, 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 very common. But I strongly believe PA is more important than the CA. That is, preventive action is always a major area which I like it. But Kappa has rather than the corrective action. Of course, you tend to make mistakes, and the Kappas need to be in place and properly, right from management review, design control, change management, supply management, field remediation, and so on and so forth. So Dr. Barishkar is a master in this. Definitely, he might going to elaborate more onto this. Well, internal audits, this is more important, my dear friends. And today, last week only, we saw a news item. FEI can visit you anytime without notice. They are starting the physical audits very soon, be it MHRA or FDA or whatsoever. So you have to be on your tender. There is no the notice period for you people, for all of us. So for that, what is important is we have to respect our internal audits. Internal audits are we have to treat internal audits more critical than external audits. Sometimes external audits might leave you. They might not look into all the intricacies or all in the micro level, and you still get it carried away. But internal audits, you should be in such a frame it in such a manner. You cannot leave any things unnoticed. So be critical on your internal audits as per the schedule. You have to undergo these internal audits periodically. Then you will be safe. You don't need to wait for the notices given by the audit authorities. So anytime tomorrow morning somebody is coming, you are already prepared. I think this is the need of the hour for every pharmaceutical industry, be it a medium scale or a large scale whatsoever. And finally, the results, of course, if you really follow all these things, the results will follow. So in this industry, the subjectivity, no subject chalega 99. Oh, you're there 99%. My dear friends, that 1% non-complacency will cost you dearly. And sometimes, I don't want to say that, but definitely it costs the companies hugely. And the you have to have the systematic approach. You have to have in your system the consistency and the minimize rejections, rather zeroing rejections and the improve overall quality. This is the target of every stakeholder. And eventually, what will happen? This improves your health of the enterprise and also the health of the people, your ultimate customers. And the costs will reduce and the quality will increase. That's what's going to happen. And eventually, what is going to happen? Just now I said that it improves the health of the patients eventually and results in the customer delight. And now, very brief, very small, that non-compliances, if you are not following the compliance, what is the risks of non-compliance? The common issues that arise in packaging and pharmaceutical products, especially for the exports. Of course, this is applicable for the. Well, I want to play this small.
Is there an audio to it also, sir?
Okay. I think it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'll explain. This is very. Well, this is actually the most famous, infamous rather, if you say Chicago Tylenol murders. We call the murders only. In the pharmaceutical sector, we always talk about the Chicago Tylenol murders were a series of poisoning deaths resulting from drug tampering in Chicago metropolitan area in 1982. The victims had all taken Tylenol branded acetaminophen capsules that had been laced a little bit of potassium cyanide. Really, I think we often categorize the periods pre-Chicago Tylenol effect and the post-Chicago Tylenol effect. Later on, but one must take a notice of how Johnson and Johnson handled the entire situation. Can you believe it placed the consumer first by recalling 31 million doses at that time, 1982 Tylenol capsules that even though they all might be safe, but they never compromised on the whole situation. But after that, within a year, they invested around 100 million into the system. Tylenol sales have rebounded. In 1983, the US Congress passed what was called the Tylenol bill, making it a federal offense to tamper with the consumer products. In 1989, the FDA also has come up with established federal guidelines for manufacturers to make all such products tamper-proof. In fact, that paved the way for all the product protection methods. Why I told this example is that the way Johnson & Johnson addressed this issue by the new product development, product protection methods, the ironclad pledges to do better in protecting. Working with FDA officials those days, they introduced a new tamper-proof packaging, which included the foil seals and other features that made it obvious to a consumer if foul play had transpired. It's easy to find out. But now it is it has become a common norm. So that example made us realize what is important and how critical is our industry. As in the beginning, I was telling you, the pharmaceutical industry is different from other industries. This is how the wrong labeling, small wrong labeling also, how recalls happens. Maybe in the Q&A, we can address this with H1G, and inaccurate braille also sometimes cost you dearly. And translation mistakes, very small mistakes are unnoticed, but this will cost your products very much. Coding errors also, sometimes they get unnoticed, but it might result in your product recalls and huge problems. Foreign matter, as I was telling you in the beginning, a small foreign matter contamination also would cost you the entire batch, may have to be recalled sometimes. At the same time, the better quality of life through better packaging for more people. This is our World Packaging Organization mission. The product mix-ups also cost us very dearly. The same product with say different strengths or same look-alike products. It's a huge books are written on these product mix-ups. This is another great problematic area. Labeling requirements. You always have to be on your 10 toes. Whenever you're exporting to your country, unfortunately, there is no harmonious requirements. Even though we are working out with we are requesting all the FDAs to come, at least to come on a little harmony, you still have the specific requirements for a country. So you always have to be mind while manufacturing. You have to know the requirements of the importing country. CRSF requirements, the child residence senior friendly. Many a times we think child residence is simple child residence. You have to be very careful. I can elaborate it later on in Q&A. Transit worthiness is very, very important. After doing all these efforts of producing your life-saving drugs, if they get damaged during the transit, it's not worth. So transport validation, that is very important. UN certification, the Indian Institute of Packaging is an authorized nodal agency for certificating your solid hazardous material. Finally, this statement I used to give a couple of years ago. Now it has become a trend. Packaging is your second physician. You might be wondering what it is. And today, packaging is acting, especially in the post-pandemic conditions. It has become almost all the more true. It is acting like a physician, suggesting you to take the doses in time, and even it gives a feedback to the manufacturer and also the physician with the electronic integration into your product packaging. End of the day, packaging matters for this. Thank you very much for this opportunity given, LPC.
Thank you very much, sir. Excellent presentation, sir. We thoroughly enjoyed.